Hi, my name's Luke. I'm a carver in wood, or a wood sculptor, and I carve birds, native birds, as a profession. Part of some of my work here, like this bird here, is a carved from wood. That's what I do. This is um, a fantail I've carved that hasn't been painted like this bird, um, and this is a fantail in the progress. But what I'm going to demonstrate today is a useful sculpting tool called making a maquette, which is a small model that mimics what I'm going to make in wood, but doing that process helps me avoid mistakes in the more expensive material in the less expensive material that I'm going to demonstrate. Techniques I'm going to demonstrate here. So what I'm going to do is make a model like this. This is one I've done in the past for a black stilt. And this was to help me visualize how the wings crossed over at the back before I got to carving in wood and making mistakes. This is made from foam, and this foam is used by dried flower arrangers to poke their flowers in, and it's really easily shapeable. There's two types. There's dry for dried flower arrangements and wet for live flowers, so they stay alive longer in displays at MP shows and the like. And the foam is carved, and then I coat it with air hardening clay like this, and which creates a coating over the top of the foam like an M&M candy coating over the chocolate. So I'll just to demonstrate it, I'll make the head for this bird out of foam. So I'm going to use the wet foam because it's really nice, and the tools I use are really safe for kids type of tools. There's like a really blunt knife. You can use a pointy stick or even your finger. So this material, I'll demonstrate an offcut, can be moulded just by crushing as well and moulding that way, and then modified by pressing items into it and leaving an impression, or even using that to just carve channels or curves. For this exercise, I'm going to carve a bit off this block using the butter knife, and then with a toothpick as a pointy tool, just draw the outline around the shape of the bird's head. Toothpicks come in handy for joining. Will come in handy for joining the head on the other model, and then just use a roughly carve out. And this is almost a direct analog for like a bandsaw cutting. If the blade cuts straight up and down, it just helps. And the bandsaw, this is the first cut I do in wood, and it takes obviously longer in wood.
The advantages of using this be that if you make mistakes, it's easy to fix. Is that correct?
Yeah, if I make a mistake, easy to fix. I'll demonstrate that. So now I don't need to carve this in the round, and I don't have a plan, but I think the head's roughly round and points to the front, and the beak. I've done this before, so I sort of know the shape, and it starts creating the 3D.
It's actually amazing.
I've just broken the beak off accidentally, but it's not a problem. I'm not concerned by it at all because this is where toothpicks come in handy, and it's actually probably stronger now that I've got the toothpick reinforcing it. I'll just leave that, so yep, like that. And then you can mould it by, the wet stuff in particular is easy that way. The dry stuff is a bit stiffer. With the wet stuff you can use your hands like you would sandpaper, or you can use sandpaper, a rough sandpaper, which rounds out all those flat planes that you just created and makes it more and you just I just go by eye, and to get the beak looking narrow and thing, you can just crush the foam. You don't need to cut all the time. And do a test fit on the previously prepared model.
Look at that.
And that also helps you plan what pose you're going to have in the wood by manipulating it in that way. So the next step, this isn't quite right, but for demonstration purposes, I'll do the eye channels by just pressing my thumb, using my fingers to manipulate where the eyes will go, and I'll just poke a hole to demonstrate where the eyes might be too. Starts getting a bit of life.
You can tell you've done it before, look.
Yeah. So this is fun and it's quick. So carving this in wood takes half a day to get to this stage. Any niceness.
Oh wow,
That looks pretty cool.
it does.
So now I'll break off a bit of this gas, and one great thing about this resource is the way it's stored is I can just roll the ends up and it still lasts for ages as well, months in this state. And with this material in the foam, rather than try and stick the clay directly to thing, it just doesn't adhere. You need to get some water and really get it into a slurry. So you effectively making a paint, a liquid clay paint, which you can just smear to the surface
Yeah.
to make it adhere for the first coat. And also when you're rubbing off the water and things with the water, why it's not sticking is because all that dust from your carving before, and it dries pretty quick.
How many coats do you need to put on?
I think it will depend on what you want to achieve. 2 coats minimum.
Okay.
The first coat is just to make a tooth for the next coat. Well, that broke, and I have another, which is the beauty of this. If this was wood and I wanted to keep natural wood, that would be a problem because it wouldn't match. The next piece of wood can't guarantee to match. And so this process can actually make a sculpture in its own right, regardless of. So if a child was making a carving, this is a sculpture, this would be the end result. The final result of this would be a carving they'd take home and be proud of, without using a whole lot of clay.
Very good. And it doesn't, like you're saying, it doesn't matter if it breaks because it's easily fixed.
It's easily fixed. So I'd continue on with this one, but I can demonstrate a catastrophic bruise on the finished carving and a fix for it. So we'll just let that side of it dry for demonstration purposes, because it won't take long, and I'll come back to that. And I'll make another beak again and probably wouldn't see that dry. So this bird, I have actually made a carving using this model, but if it were to get damaged, and no one needs to panic because it's repairable. You can, with this particular clay, wet the clay again, and it comes manipulatable, and look, it's filled the hole,
Wow.
coated the hole, and
Yeah.
that'll dry like that, but you can just plug it up with a little lump, and that's that fixed.
Oh wow.
And then once that's dry, you can paint it. So one I've done before, just ordinary acrylics. This is the same coloured clay, except painted to look like bone. This is a skull, a scale skull of the Haast eagle. You can see there's some damage there, which if I could be bothered, would fix. Like that. But once you paint it, it really makes the surface impermeable to water and things. So if a kid makes a model, that the final step is to paint it, and they can give it racing stripes and things. And this process could be used to make houses, to make spaceships, add cardboard to the model for thinner things. So to demonstrate, if I was using this plan of the head as actual part of the carving, well, you can just insert it in and use the clay around it to soften the edges, and that's another element. Like there could be a wing on a spaceship would be that, and then but also as a joiner as well. Instead of the toothpick, you could join two blocks together, but the toothpick is very secure and enjoyable, and that isn't going to fall apart, and then when you've got clay on it, that help binds that together again. So this needs a little more time. Yeah, but that's the basics of carving in the foam. It's very tactile, really enjoyable, and it's a good way, I imagine, that kids can take a 2D drawing like that, transfer it to a block like I demonstrated earlier, and then visualize it and start manipulating it into a 3D object, and so they'll learn to see the 2D drawing as 3D in the imagination easier once they've started to do this sort of thing. And who knows, the sky's the limit. An engineer building bridges, modelling cars, or even carving birds out of wood. So that, in a nutshell, is a really nice technique to create a small sculpture that is very light. That is extremely light. Uses a efficient use of resources. The foam is extremely cheap, only a maximum of $1. I can't remember how much, but for a block of foam like that, it's very cheap. And the clay goes further, rather than just trying to lump a piece of clay into a final shape and waiting for it to dry for ages. The clay goes further, and they can return to it and manipulate it if they see they're not satisfied with something, and make it better just by wetting it back and adding bits of clay. I enjoy this part of creating before I get to the bird. It gets me excited for my carving. So my next carving, I'm going to do kakapo, but the blocks of wood foam are too small, so I'm going to create, just as you would in woodwork, a bigger piece of wood or bigger piece to carve from by laminating these together. In this case, I'm going to just use toothpicks to join it together, but in wood it would be a similar technique, just using glue and bigger pieces of wood. So real world sort of like learning applications just from something like this.
It's safe.
And safe. This
Very
is a
safe.
safe and non-toxic. And if a kid's prone to being scared about making mistakes, it's a medium where they're free to make mistakes because they can learn that they can fix them, or and take chances or experiment. So yeah, it does get a bit messy. That's about it.
Thank you very much.